He said going forward, the IWGP title will be defended in Japan, and the global title will be defended internationally or against invaders from other companies. And he claims that he will boycott any event that has an IWGP heavyweight title match that is not in the main event. I guess that would include those Forbidden Door pay-per-views. I like this guy. I like his moxie. A true champion of the people. Now, Tsuji also announced what sounds like the end of Bullet Club, as there is now a new group going by the name Unbound Company, which is a weird name for a faction. It sounds more like a brand of jeans that you would shop for at Macy's. I don't know if it's been 100% confirmed that Bullet Club is dead, or the Bullet Club name is dead, but I saw Finn Balor, who founded Bullet Club. He shared an illustration that somebody made on Instagram. It was from a fan showing a tombstone with the Bullet Club logo and 2013 to 2026 written on it. So it sounds like Bullet Club is dead. And honestly, it's been dead for a while now. I mean, I know they've had their little splinter groups. The Bullet Club War Dogs were pretty popular, I think, over there. David Finlay and Gabe Kidd were part of it, and Clark Connors and others. But like, my God, like how many subgroups have there been, right? Like House of Torture was a Bullet Club subgroup for years. Bullet Club Gold in AEW. Of course, you had the Elite. There's been quite a few of them. So let's have a conversation here about Bullet Club, if this really is the end. Bullet Club will go down as one of the most influential factions in the history of professional wrestling. I cannot sit here and say the most influential because I think the NWO had to walk in order for Bullet Club to run. The NWO, Too Sweet gesture and the For Life, right? Bullet Club took those from the NWO. And for all the Bullet Club offshoot groups, you look at the NWO, right? You had the NWO Wolfpack. You had the LWO in WCW, which they brought back a few years ago in WWE, and they made a lot of money off that LWO merch. ECW had the BWO, the Blue World Order. And then when Hogan, Hall, and Nash came back to WWE in 2002, it was as the New World Order. They tried to resurrect it there. Now, it didn't work, but they tried. It was destined to fail. There was no way that they were ever going to be able to recreate the magic that WCW had with it the first time. And that, to be fair, I mean, when the NWO was initially formed, if you think about the original concept of it and what they tried to pawn it off as, Bischoff was very successful with it, even though he got hit with a lawsuit almost right away. But, it was about an invasion of WCW, the likes of which they had never seen before. They had somebody who was already on the inside that had made that big company up north a lot of money, and he was the face of that promotion for many, many years. And then all of a sudden, these other known entities, these other names from that same promotion come in, right? And all the pieces are falling into place, and it really feels like, man, there's this invasion happening from the inside and the outside. And it got people very excited. It was a different time in wrestling also where people didn't know everything. You didn't have social media. Not everybody was connected and conversing about it. So there was a lot of uncertainty about, hey, is this real? Or hey, who's going to jump ship next? Today we would already know, because if Meltzer wasn't talking about it, then you'd have Fightful, you'd have bodyslam.net, you'd have this website or that website. And it's very hard to keep surprises these days. So it was just a very different time in wrestling. And again, the initial kind of purpose of the NWO was very different than when they came into WWE. It wasn't an invasion. I mean, it was just they were trying to capture lightning in a bottle again, and it was just never going to work. But over the years, I feel like there have been lots of attempts to recapture that magic to very little success. So the NWO was highly influential in that regard. Often imitated, never duplicated. Bullet Club has a lot in common, actually, with the NWO. You had two groups that got really big, really fast, and were very successful in their respective eras in their own way, but they overstayed their welcome. They lasted beyond their expiration date, and they sort of limped to the end, right? In the end, they went out with a whimper instead of a bang. They just sort of fizzled out because there really was no ending in mind for them. And when something works, the inclination is to keep running with it until you run it into the ground and it doesn't really work anymore. But NWO and Bullet Club were hardly identical. You know, the NWO was born out of, again, this perceived invasion of outsiders from another company or people that had worked there before. Like they were infiltrating. But the key is that they were talents that were already established. Hulk Hogan was the biggest name in the history of the business. One of the more recognized faces on the planet. Bullet Club was different. Bullet Club was started by Finn Balor after he betrayed his partner. And he recruited other foreign talents like Carl Anderson and Tama Tonga. It was a faction of foreigners. They were there to disrupt the system. Like nobody knew who these guys were back then. They weren't real stars, right? Not even in the way they would go on to become. And even then, frankly, they weren't star power wise. They didn't come close to the, top stars of the NWO. But back then, again, they were unknown entities. They weren't real stars. They lifted each other up. They made each other better. They were better together as the sum of their parts rather than as individual parts by themselves. Right? It got Balor a deal with NXT. And then it was AJ Styles after he left. I would argue that that was the best AJ Styles. Bullet Club AJ Styles as IWGP champion. It was a brief run. It didn't last very long. But it's also what landed him a WWE contract. Now, would he have ended up in WWE anyway? Probably. Everyone knew how talented AJ Styles was from his days in TNA. But I don't think he comes into WWE as big of a name as he was without that Bullet Club run first and taking over as the leader, right? That made him a much bigger deal. And then it was Kenny Omega. Then it was Jay White, right? More recently, it was David Finlay. And wouldn't you know, Fightful is reporting now that there is WWE interest in David Finlay, because of course there is, as there should be. You don't think that run with the War Dogs didn't help elevate him? Cody Rhodes. He may not have been one of the official leaders, but he also has history in Bullet Club. So many top stars of today were influenced and shaped by their time in Bullet Club. The Young Bucks, the Elite. There is no All In 2018 without the Elite. There is no All Elite Wrestling without the Elite. And there is no Elite without Bullet Club. Bullet Club helped spawn some of the biggest names in wrestling from the past decade plus. That is the legacy Bullet Club leaves behind, and that is the biggest difference between Bullet Club and the NWO. The NWO did not make any new stars. Hogan, Hall, Nash, Savage, Waltman, DiBiase, Giant, Hennig, Rude, Luger, Jeff Jarrett, Bret Hart. Like these were all established names already. Now, certain guys benefited from it, like Scott Steiner when he turned heel on his brother, right? Big Papa Pump was born, or Buff Bagwell. But those examples are few and far between. I mean, the big story was Sting trying to be the savior of WCW against the NWO. And let's not pretend like Sting wasn't already a star, right? Now, it helped give us Crow Sting, but Sting was already a main event player. Sting was already a former world champion. He was a proven commodity. Goldberg, he beat Hollywood Hogan in the Georgia Dome to win his first world title, but the NWO did not make Bill Goldberg. DDP, turning down the NWO, hitting that diamond cutter. That was a huge turning point in his career, but he was already making a connection with the audience before that. So the NWO was beneficial to certain people, but it was mostly just a collection of name talents that did more harm than good when you look at it in totality. Very few people came out of the NWO looking stronger. Bullet Club was more successful than the NWO in that regard, in that it helped launch people in a way that the NWO did not. You know, the New World Order, it was a faction built on star power. Bullet Club was a group that helped create stars. Those are the keys with Bullet Club. The careers that it helped launch and the fact that you could draw a straight line from Bullet Club to the creation of AEW. Now we're 6 years in. AEW is the number 2 wrestling promotion, size-wise, business-wise, in the entire world. $600 million media rights deal. That very likely does not happen. It does not exist without Bullet Club. And with each new leader, Bullet Club seemed to get stronger. When Balor left, it went to AJ. And then it went to Omega, and they only grew stronger and more relevant. Less so in recent years, but you look at the NWO, there's no better version than the OG version. No other incarnation of the NWO, including the Wolfpack. And I know a lot of people love the Wolfpack, and they had cool music and all that. No other version of the NWO meant what the original meant. The NWO was more impactful for a shorter period of time when they had those original members. I mean, it literally changed the industry forever. That's why I can't say the Bullet Club is more influential than the NWO, right? When the influence of the NWO and that whole Monday Night War period, like you take the NWO away, everything changes, including what WWE started doing in 97 and 98 that launched them into the stratosphere. You got names like Stone Cold and The Rock, right? Mr. McMahon probably doesn't become a thing on TV if we don't first have Eric Bischoff as a heel figure on TV working for the NWO. You take them away, Nitro doesn't start beating Raw. Nitro doesn't start beating Raw. We're still getting the silly gimmicks and the family-friendly stuff that they were doing in the mid-90s because they have no real incentive to change. It's only when Vince's back was up against the wall that he was forced to change, which is why competition is a good thing. So no matter how many smaller groups it may have spawned across multiple promotions, and not just New Japan, but you had Bullet Club groups in AEW and Ring of Honor, CMLL. Bullet Club has been everywhere, but if we're talking about overall influence or impact, NWO is still number one. But there is absolutely an argument to be made that Bullet Club surpassed the NWO as the better faction for what it did for some of its individual members, right? The NWO was a vehicle, let's be honest here, the NWO was a vehicle to keep one man over for a longer period of time, and that was Hulk Hogan. The Hollywood Hogan stuff, that added a good 5 years to Hogan's career that he would not have gotten otherwise. The red and yellow stuff, if he would have just kept the red and yellow stuff going, he would have always been a big star. He would have always been over to a degree, but believe me, it was already getting stale. And to get 5 more solid years business-wise out of it, that would have been a stretch. Bullet Club was a vehicle for multiple people who have gone on to make a lot of money for a lot of different people. That includes Nick Khan and Paul Levesque, and that includes Tony Khan. And if that's the case, then I would make the argument that Finn Balor is one of the most influential wrestlers of all time because he's the one who started Bullet Club. He's the one who started the engine and got the train moving along the tracks. And when he hopped off, a bunch of other people hopped on and made it go even faster. And he also trained Becky Lynch, who I would say is the most successful female performer in WWE history. So even if Balor never holds another world title for the rest of his career, he's already solidified himself as a future Hall of Famer just off the credentials that he already has.